Hello, everybody. Okay, we'll start by. So this is Q&A session. For those people that are new, not familiar with it, it's 1 hour a week. People can join live and ask questions, or if they've got any doubts about anything, it's a good opportunity for people to ask any questions that they've got about the exam or about grammar or whatever. We choose a different subject or two every week, and basically this session, it's a nice opportunity for us to concentrate on certain aspects of grammar or the language that perhaps in the classes we don't get quite as much time to spend on it. These subjects are involved in your classes, but maybe not in such detail for an hour, for example. So it's a good opportunity to look at a few things in more detail in relation to the exams. Today's Q&A, this session is about something called distancing. You can use distancing in a number of different ways. It's very important and necessary, absolutely necessary, in particularly the formal style of writing. So that could be the report, the proposal, or the essay. Basically, what distancing does is it makes the language of your writing or speaking, makes the language sound more formal, basically. I suppose that the big reason, or one of the biggest reasons that it's so important in reports, proposals, and essays is that in those three styles of writing, it is incredibly important that you do not put your opinion in those writings until at least the conclusion. I always suggest that even in the conclusion, I would not put a direct opinion, okay? Reports, proposals, and essays are objective pieces of writing. So it's very, very important, it's vital that you avoid direct, opinions and direct speech. So always try to be objective and try to use distancing. We're going to look at that obviously in this session. Also, if you think about what a report or a proposal is, it's a piece of writing that looks at different arguments for a project. Okay, a report is based on something that happened in the past, and a proposal is a piece of writing that is based on something that is proposed to happen in the future. Those are the big differences. The structure and the style of writing is very similar, the same, proposal and report. However, if you imagine those two pieces of writing, if somebody is asked to write a report or a proposal, it would be expected that you ask other people for their information, feedback, opinions. And what this does is it gives reports and proposals more credibility. If you do a report or a proposal that is basically you talking about how you see things or your experience of something, and you do not use information that is taken from other people or objective information or information that is accepted in general society, things like, I don't know, it's generally accepted that nowadays both parents in a family work, okay? The reason that you do that, instead of saying, I believe that nowadays both parents in most families work, instead you use other people's information and you use distancing. You need to distance yourself from the information given in the report. Using distancing, it just allows you to be more objective and not direct. So we're going to look at two different tasks, writing tasks, because the tasks quite different, but one thing remains the same. And a lot of students, when we do reports, particularly in the classes, speak to them about distancing, about passive speech, about using expressions and being objective. And a lot of people say to me, a lot of students, how can you be objective or use distancing when the writing task actually says, it asks for your experience and what you think and what you have done, for example. Very important piece of information for all first certificate and advanced students is that even if the writing task it almost directly points to you. So it says, do you feel that family life has changed, or write about your experience? You must still be objective. Now, something that you can try to remember that makes distancing and using passive speech easier is, I suggest that to all my students, that when you do a report or an essay or a proposal, you avoid the words I, we, my, our, ours, right? Do not make the writing about you. Make it about the subject. And if you make the writings about the subject, it's much easier to use passive speech and distancing and do this. We'll look at a few different ways to do it. Let's speak first about passive speech, just briefly. I've got here, as you can see, I've got a writing that one of our students has done, and this is actually, we're looking more at first certificates there. This is a B2 student. I hope he doesn't mind me using it, Pablo. Okay, this is the way that I correct writing. So I use a colour scheme. Blue is things that are good that would allow you to score more points. Red is something that is incorrect in this case. In this example here, the student put families that lives, but families are obviously plural, so the verb needed to be without the s. Okay, so it's a plural verb. Live, they live, families live. And then, as you can see, I've also got green here. Now, any green text that you see in your writings, this basically means that it's not incorrect. However, I then try to give you here an alternative. And as you can see here, the comment, my alternative idea is to use passive speech, and this is what we're talking about now. So remember, in these types of writings that you have to try to be objective. And this particular student, he wrote here, after contrasting information by myself and a number of families, we have identified some relevant differences. Okay, it's not incorrect, it's not bad, but Cambridge like you to use a different variation of language and tenses and vocabulary. It's no different whether it's vocabulary or tenses, they want you to use a variation. Therefore, this is a perfect opportunity here to use passive speech. So instead of saying, we have identified some relevant differences, I've given here to the right, as you can see on the screen, several relevant differences have been identified. So here I use passive speech. I don't talk about the people, we, me, our. I talk about the subject itself, and in this case, the subject is differences, and I use a reporting verb as well, reported speech. So several relevant differences have been identified. That would look better here rather than the student's use of direct speech. You'll notice as well here that this student here, information by myself, it's not incorrect, but I would here, this is a little bit off topic, but to allow you to use distancing, you basically try to use information that is given to you by other people. Okay, so it's always very useful in an introduction to a report or a proposal or an essay. A little sentence about how you obtained or how you gathered the information, and I'm going to just type something here so you can see an example. And it's a very simple sentence, excuse me, to gather the necessary information. I don't know, what's this one about? Families, 20 families. Don't use the number, because this has to be 20 families were surveyed, right? So this is quite simple, and this is a good type of sentence to put into your introduction, because later in the writing you can then relate to these 20 families, right? And these 20 families are going to be the people who you take who you get your information from. And this in itself, if you do this in the introduction, this then in itself allows you to automatically use distancing, because later in the next two paragraphs, when you speak about the different things that you have to balance and you have to discuss, you can use those 20 families in this case to give information about their opinions and about what they said and about what they think. And this is, again, I'm talking about credibility. If you do a report and you use 20 families or 50 students or a number of people or society, 50 people from different backgrounds, if you use information that's being gathered from other people, your report gains more credibility, because it's not just about what you feel, it's about what the people think. So just remember that when you use passive speech, it concentrates on the subject rather than what the people did or what you did to get that information. So this is a good example here. Rather than, and just a few minutes ago I mentioned, when you do a report, try to avoid we, try to avoid I, and then by doing that you can use passive speech. And again, in this case, several relevant differences have been identified. So I speak about the differences rather than I identified different differences or we identified some relevant differences. Don't use we, use passive speech to speak about it, okay? Okay, so I could speak about passive speech for a long time, but I think the best thing for me to do is at the end of this, I've got a document that I'm going to attach to the email that I can send all of you. And in this session, really more, we're going to speak about different ways of using distancing. And some of those ways I'm going to explain now. So let me just go to a whiteboard and share this with you as well. Put this to the bottom. So another way of using distancing. Oh, sorry. Another way of using distancing. Let me move my face out of the way. Some expressions, okay, but also before we look at expressions, modal verbs. Remember, let me just put this before. Be objective, okay. And one way you can do that is by using modal verbs. Now, even if something is obvious, or you think that something is obvious, don't use direct speech. Use modal verbs like might be, or just might, could, may. I'm going to put here as well must. So if you use must, okay, modal verbs are a good way to just use distancing. But if you've got a strong suggestion or something that's very obvious, rather than saying, I don't know, the university absolutely have to improve the curriculum, or from my point of view, the university have to improve the curriculum. That's too direct, okay? Always try to be objective, and if I give you a couple of example sentences here, I'll just use might and must. Must is basically just a stronger, it sounds like obligation, but sometimes it can be used as a very strong suggestion. So I can't speak and type at the same time. Right, you'll notice there, rather than saying it is a good idea, I'm saying it might be a useful idea to increase the number of students who take part in the course. I use might, okay? That way I'm more objective, I use a modal verb. I'm not saying, I think that the university need to increase. No, not me. I'm using might, and I'm using distancing and passive speech. I'm not saying I think it's a good idea, I'm saying it might be a useful idea. And then another way to do it, but using must. So must always sounds quite strong, and it is strong, and there's nothing wrong with using strong language in a report or a proposal, but it still has to be objective. Don't use I think, we believe, or you must, or whatever, or have, the university have to. No. More must be done to increase the number of activities. Okay, now imagine that it's talking about a course at the university or something like that. Okay, you can use must, and it's quite strong, but it's not coming from you. Okay, I mean, you're not saying I think or I believe. Another way, if we think about what I've just spoken about, using information that you gather from other people, you can also use something called quantifying, but we're not going to look at that today. So again, on the same just trying to think of different scenarios here. So if you use must, as long as it doesn't come from you and you use the information that's been taken from other people, and this last sentence is a good example of that. It says several students expressed that the university must improve its communication. That's distancing, because when you write this report, you're saying this is not me saying that the university must improve its communication. It is the students who I questioned or asked or interviewed who have said this. So automatically you distance yourself from what the opinions about the university are, and it's something that you absolutely need to do. Okay. Another way. Okay, expressions and phrases in a similar way. So again, we're talking about distancing. Remember that even if the task says write about your experience, it's still expected that you ask your fellow students, you ask families, you speak to other people, and they give you information and you report this information. So expressions, let me just think where we are here. Okay, yeah. I think it is expressions. Let's just call it phrases. Distancing phrases. So according to, apparently, seems, appears to be. Those are both with the verb to be, and then looks like. So these distancing phrases, again, is a way of distancing yourself from the opinion, rather than saying, I believe, it's my view, in my honest opinion, which you need to not use, okay? Only opinions in the conclusions. You can use these phrases according to, apparently, seems. If I give you a couple of example sentences, so you can see that here I'm being very objective. It would seem that the course has been a success for the majority of attendees. Okay, it would seem. I'm not saying it is, it has been. I'm saying it would seem. So I'm trying to be objective. And then if we just use according to 50% of the workers, so it could be about something else. Something like that. According to 50% of the workers, the facilities are of a high standard. Okay, you get the idea. Okay, this is distancing. I'm not saying me, we, our, I. Okay, I'm using other people. And if you use other people's information, you automatically use distancing. Let me just move my tools, then the last one. Okay. Okay, and then lastly, this would be, okay, again, linked, connected to the last bit. So, others, findings, or views, and general statements. Okay, now this is also important. Again, it's distancing. It gives you an opportunity to distance yourself from the opinions and from what's happening. And there are quite a lot here. I might have to use another page, but imagine that you're doing a report about a university. So you might use students or teachers or professors or tutors. If you're talking about something professional or technical, you might use a group of people who know a lot about the subject. Of course, you have to invent this and make it up, but experts is a good one, okay? So experts believe that, okay? You can, when you use that, you're saying when you do the report, it's not me that thinks this. It's the experts that tell us that this is what the facts are. Okay, so use facts from other people. You can be very general. You don't have to be too technical. Many people believe that, and then you continue. Okay, and then also. Widely acknowledged that, okay, something that is widely acknowledged is something that is generally accepted by most people, something that a lot of people know, they take it for granted. So if I were to use an example or a sentence, I would say something like, a bit like before, it's widely acknowledged that in the 21st century, parents in families both work. Okay, most people know that, it's true, especially in Europe, in Spain, Britain, or whatever. It's widely acknowledged that both parents in a family have to work. Okay, everybody knows that, everybody says it. As long as you keep your opinion out of the sentence and the phrase, it looks better this way, it sounds better, it's more objective, and it gives your report or proposal or essay more credibility. Okay. Another one, it is understood that, okay, so again, it is understood, I'm using passive, I'm not saying we understand that, I'm saying it is understood that, and then there's another one, okay, slightly different one. Generally accepted view is that, and then you would go on to explain your whatever it is. So these are some really good ways of using information, of using distancing. Before we spoke about passive speech and how to concentrate on the subject rather than the people and their thoughts, or your thought more than anything. You can also use modal verbs like might be, could be, may, must to use distancing. Try to be objective. These distancing phrases, according to, apparently, seems, appears to be, looks like, and then using information that you took from other people, or general statements, and general statements are the ones at the end here where this is what people in general think. Okay, so using these different ways. Let me take a picture of this. Can you save it? Using these different ways of distancing, it basically allows you to score more points in the exam. As I've said before, you definitely do not want to use your opinions in the writings other than in the conclusions. Okay, the conclusions are usually taken up by giving suggestions and basically summarising what your writing has found, but you must not put opinions in the writing. It has, in the first 3 paragraphs, for example, only put opinions in the conclusion. Now, I want to just show you 2 samples of an exam, and like I said before, these are first certificate, but I want to just show you that obviously the tasks can change, they can differ, and that's fine. Okay, but it doesn't mean that your language has to change. Your language should stay the same. So this report here, so this is the report, this is first certificate, and it says your school has recently published the first issue of the school magazine. Now your teacher has asked you to write a report saying what your classmates like or dislike about the article. So your classmates, this clearly states that you've got to write about what your classmates feel or dislike or like about the article. So that's quite clear in the task that you would have to, perhaps in the introduction, you would say something like, to get most people's opinions on the new school magazine, we interviewed 50 students at the school. Okay, perfect. And then using those 50 students, you could use reported speech, and the information that you took from those people, you can use distancing. So you could say a high number of the students believed or felt that the website was not user-friendly or something, but using their information. And then here, making suggestions on how the magazine could improve. You'll notice that it even uses modal verbs. It uses could, and that's quite a good clue. And when it says making suggestions, of course, most common ways to make suggestions are other modal verbs, the 2 big ones, which are should and ought to. So they would go in your conclusion. But you can see here that this is quite clear. This task asks you to speak about a new magazine in a school, but it asks you to report what your classmates like or dislike about the articles, and then the sports page. If we just move on, let me just clear this. I'm going to go to a different task, because I want this other task to show people about, there's a lot of confusion sometimes with tasks. Okay, here it doesn't say write about your experience, but it says here you are doing a school project about family life in different countries. Your teacher has asked you to write a short report about your country, saying what activities families do together, how much grandparents are involved in family life, and whether you think family life has changed in the past few years. Right. This is much more direct, because when students read this task, they always say to me, yeah, but they say, Christian, in the task, it says you. and it says you, and it says you, okay? And that's true, okay? So a lot of people automatically think that in the writing they need to put, I believe, I experienced, we think, but don't do that, okay? Be objective. Use the techniques and the tips that I gave you earlier in this session to be objective, to use distancing, and to be more objective with your writing, okay? I guarantee that it'll help you score points. These are objective pieces of writing, so you can just see here the difference between two separate tasks. One of the tasks, this one, is the language in the task is much more direct, saying you, but you must not think that that allows you then to put your opinions in the middle two paragraphs. You can't do that. You have to be objective. And if you do put an opinion, only put it in the conclusion. I know that I sound like I'm repeating myself, and I am, but this is really, really important. If you put an opinion phrase and an opinionative sentence in the introduction or in the middle two paragraphs of a report or an essay or a proposal, you will probably fail. Okay, that's how important it is. So please remember to make sure that you do this. You'll notice that the reports are generally about typical things. Okay, but always put in the introduction that you've interviewed some people to get the information, and then you can use that information to give your report or proposal more credibility. Okay. Is there anything else? I don't think so. I will just go back to the writing that the student did, because I can show you a few typical corrections that I tend to do with the writings. Like I said before, you can see that I've got a colour scheme, colour code. Okay, let's have a look. Okay. Here, so reported speech is quite a good one as well. If you're using information that's been given to you from other people, use reported speech. Now, this sentence here in the second paragraph, it's okay, it's quite good. So this is good because the students use majority, which is quantifying, which is good, and it's quite a good variety. So the majority of families that live in Spain usually prefer doing adventure things together. Okay, and I've added here, this is my writing in yellow, I've put such as, what, I need you to tell me. So make sure that you give examples in your writings, okay? But when I look at this first sentence, the majority of families that live in Spain usually prefer doing adventure things together. My question then is, how do you know that? Why? And if it sounds like the person who's writing the report is just giving their view, okay? Now, if they changed this and used some information that was given to them by other people, so imagine they ask families in Pamplona, several families were asked, okay? And instead of saying the majority of families that live in Spain, look at that sentence instead, okay? I say the majority of families in the questionnaire, and the questionnaire would be the survey or the questionnaire that I've given families so that I can get some credible information back for this report. Otherwise, it sounds like I'm just taking information that I've taken out of my head, okay? You need to try to not do that. Let me just try to put this so you can read it. Let me put it in the middle. Here we go. The majority of families in the questionnaire mentioned that they enjoy doing adventure activities together in their free time. Now here as well, you can see that I've also used reported speech, mentioned. Okay. Now that's also important. because if you take information from other people, you can use reported speech to put it in your report or your proposal or your essay. Okay, so here the important thing is that I don't just say the majority of families that live in Spain do things together. It sounds like it comes from you, just out of your head. Make sure that you use the families that you have spoken to. Okay, how have you got this information? Because if the information just comes from your head, it's not very credible. Okay, it's not very believable or trustworthy. So it's important. It's important about this. Let's keep going down. Let me just take a picture and move these a moment. Okay, this is quite good. So look at this one here. The student says, it is a fact that nowadays we have different daily routines as before. Good, right? This here is distancing, okay? It's distancing, it's just a factual statement. It is a fact. That is a good use of distancing. Instead of saying, I feel, I believe, it's my view, which you cannot do, it's a fact that nowadays we've got different routines to before. That could be because both parents work, we're busier, we like to do more things, I don't know, whatever. But this is good, okay? This is the type of the start of a sentence that you need to use to demonstrate distancing and to use it, okay? There's nothing really much else in this writing that I need to highlight or look at. This is okay because in the conclusion I've done to sum up, I believe. Now that's okay, that's a personal opinion, but because it's in the conclusion, it's okay, all right? But this is just a few examples of when you can see that I correct these writings, and the things that I look at are, here you've used direct, you should use passive. And here you could have used some distancing and also using the information that you gather from people who you ask to get the information for your report. So all these things are important. I mean, in general, distancing like this is good. Let me just now go to just something. I'll quickly show you a document which I want to share with you. I'll probably send it to you after this. In fact, some of you may have already received this document from your teachers. It's a distancing document. I certainly give this to my students. When your teachers give you these documents, please do them. It helps. I know that you might be busy, and we're all busy, but these documents, they help. These exercises, they help you. Okay. Now, in particular, this one. I'm going to give you another little bit of advice about these types of documents. When your teachers give you these documents and these exercises, they don't expect you to then be able to use all of them constantly. And what you need to do as students is you need to finish the exercise, look at the expressions or the phrases or the use of passive speech in this case, and choose 2 or 3 that you like and use them. Don't try to use all 20 or 25 because it's impossible. It's not realistic. What you need to do is you need to be quite intelligent with these exercises, and you need to do them first of all. Make sure that you get the corrections from your teacher. Okay, but once you know what's correct and what isn't correct, choose 2 or 3. In this case, distancing phrases or ways to use distancing, and then use them in your writing. It's no good trying to learn them but not using them. But don't try to learn 20. Take 3, okay? Use them over and over. Repeatedly use them, because that's the best way that you remember how to do something. You'll notice here, very similar to the things that I've spoken about in this session. So you have here seems and appears, right? It seems there is a direct relation between, just make it bigger so you can see it. Okay. Here, the new head of department appears to be quite friendly, right? Appears to be. This is objective. This is distancing. You don't say is friendly. You say he seems friendly. He appears to be friendly. Okay. This is good use of distancing. Here you can see passive speech. and reported speech as well. The company director is expected to resign. The missing couple are understood to have been living in Panama. There are thought to be over 1,000 species in danger of extinction. Thought to be, there are thought to be. It is said, it is believed, it is widely acknowledged, it is generally accepted that. Okay, so what you do is you distance yourself from the opinion, from the details, and from the facts. Okay, and then here, might, may, according to, apparently. Okay, so obviously we use these documents in the classes, and some of you will already have them. But like I said, complete the exercises, look at how to use them, and then choose 2 or 3, and try to use them repeatedly when you do your writings or even in your speaking. Okay, the best way to remember these this type of things is to use it. Okay, that's basically it for the distancing. I'll send you those documents after. I want to just very quickly next, and this is until the end of the session. Let's have a look here. Go back to this. I need another page. I just want to speak very quickly. It was something that happened today. It just came up coincidentally. I was speaking to Mark, and I would like. Oops, why is that there? There we go. It's about frequency adverbs, right? Now, frequency adverbs are easy. Everybody knows how to use them, but you probably use the same ones over and over and over. Okay, so I'm just going to give you quickly for the end of this session some very, very useful frequency adverbs that you can use, especially when you adverbials. Yes. Especially when you get questions in part 1 of the speaking exam, the speaking test. Okay, so if somebody asks you a question about how often you do something, you need to answer with a frequency adverb. Okay. These are more like expressions, basically. So, as we know, we've got often or often, quite often. Sometimes, occasionally, frequently, all these typical ones, usually. All right, these are all good. You can use them. They score you points. And as long as, if somebody says, how much television do you watch a week? And you say, oh, quite a lot. I sometimes watch it at the weekends, but I often watch every evening when I go home after work. Right. The question is asking you to give frequency adverbs, but then let's just talk about frequency phrases. Okay, these are more interesting. They show a little bit more variety, a little bit more descriptive, colourful language, and I don't care whether you are B1, B2, C1 or C2. You can use these if you're talking in present simple to speak about frequency. So I usually play golf at the weekend. All right, okay, but here are some really useful phrases. Okay, you have now and again, from time to time, and I'm going to give you some example sentences as well, so that you can see how these are used. Every now and again, or every now and then, actually. Every now and again, every now and then, both the same, doesn't matter. Every once in a while, once every so often, and just to give you a different much, pretty much always. So I'm actually sometimes modifying some of these adverbs. So you can say, I always watch television in the evening, or I pretty much always watch the television in the evening. So it means that actually not always, but almost always, right? So let's give you some example sentences. I don't need to put them all, do I? pretty much always call my mum at the weekends. It's like saying almost always, okay? Rather than using sometimes or occasionally, some of these phrases that I've given you are very, very good. Okay, so imagine somebody says, how often do you eat out at a restaurant? Okay, so your answer could be, well, I tend to eat out from time to time with my wife at the weekends. From time to time means now and again. De vez en cuando in Spanish, okay? So imagine if something says, how often do you watch television? I watch TV. Okay, I watch TV every now and again if there's something interesting to watch. Every once in a while. Okay, so every once in a while is not very often. It's not even sometimes. It's quite rarely or not often. Okay, so I'll put the meanings for this at the end. So let's have a think about this. Once every so often, or let's give you an expression as well. Once a blue moon. Okay. Okay, and then okay, once in a blue moon is an expression. Okay, and it basically means hardly ever, right? Let me just put what these things mean here. Almost always. Weekends. I tend to be out from time to time, so that is sometimes. Next one, sometimes. Now and again is sometimes. Oh, let's have a look. Once every so often, we'll go away for the weekend. Not often, but occasionally. Okay, and then once in a blue moon or once a blue moon is almost never. Okay, so this is just something separate, something that came up today with Mark. So he was doing a class and he mentioned he was doing present simple. We spoke about frequency adverbs, and of course the typical ones are the ones that you can see here at the top of the screen, which are often, quite often, sometimes, occasionally, frequently, usually. But you can use variations. So if you can use some of these frequency phrases instead, you're also going to get more points because it sounds a bit more natural. It shows that you know how to use these natural phrases. And basically, well, they do exactly the same job as the frequency adverbs that are most typical. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to finish that now. All these whiteboards and notes and things that we've talked about in this session, I've taken pictures, so I'll send you an email. It will be attached to the email, and of course I've also recorded the meeting. So that's it. I'll send it to everybody, and then just to let you know that these Q&A sessions for this trimester will be at 6 o'clock every Wednesday. Okay, so I hope to see some of you next week. Right, thank you.